Okay, the next thing is type 3 hypersensitivity. So type 3 hypersensitivity is where tissue damage is due to immune complexes. So these complexes get deposited into vessel walls. And cause inflammation and all kinds of problems. So a immune complex is kind of like a bunch of antibodies that sort of link together and become a complex. So let's draw this out a little bit. Okay. So these are complexes of antibodies, and they basically come together and they get sort of deposited into tissues. So if we let's have a tissue over here. So here's my tissue, and then this complex gets deposited there and sort of latches on to that. And as they float around, they get deposited into these tissues that are basically specifically the basement membranes of vessels. So this vessel basement membranes. So when that occurs, it basically initiates complement. So it initiates complement. And when that complement, one of the things that it does is increase inflammation. So it will end up increasing vascular permeability. And as that happens, we're having inflammation here. So in inflammation, chemicals are being released that bring in things like white blood cells. So it recruits neutrophils, phagocytes, and neutrophils are the same one. And these try to phagocytize the complex, but it can't. It can't eat that. And when that happens, then the neutrophil will degranulate. And that just means it's dumping out all of its granules, causing more inflammation, and you get vasculitis. So, chronic inflammation, ongoing vasculitis will lead to necrosis, which will lead to more vasculitis. And more antigen release. So more complexes into the tissues. So we can kind of show this here. This is the neutrophil that comes to try to yumptialize the complex there, and it can't do it. So then we get all this going on. Type 3 hypersensitivities. Most common is lupus. Rheumatoid. And glomerulonephritis. So this is common in the kidney. It affects the kidneys. Obviously, rheumatoid is joints. In lupus, the complexes, the antibody complex targets the DNA. So the DNA of the cells, and B cells then target that DNA. They're activated, and their activation then targets the DNA, and it starts to make antibodies against the DNA. And it forms those complexes that affect the DNA of these cells. I think that's about it. That's basically type 3. So type 3 is dealing with those immune complexes deposited in tissues. Okay. So the last one we'll talk about is type 4.